Buju Hillary Kempenich, Nindijnakas, Emek Nindudem, Mountain Nindiju Jiba, Grand Forks Ninda. What I'm saying is greetings. My name is Hillary Kempenich. I am from the Beaver Clan. I come from Turtle Mountain and I live in Grand Forks. So, and that was spoken in my Ojibwe language. Through UND, I actually started out with going to school for business, and I had an interest in writing. But I also had kind of like typical of any artist, I suppose. I had an interest in computers and digital arts and computer animation. That was over 20 years ago now. So it was the digital arts wasn't something that was being introduced quite yet into our school system. So I was going into computer programming for a while and slowly found myself adding more and more art courses and taking out the business classes. Um, so yeah, I had really built up a lot of the work in art. So switched over to actually working towards an arts degree. In that last year of my degree, I got married and my husband actually had to move away to Winnipeg. So I never got to actually finish my degree right away. And so we lived in Canada for some time before actually moving back to UND. And then we had already started our family. So it was quite busy. But that didn't stop me from my creative process. And so I began my career approximately 10 years ago, working in the arts, working independently. And I've taken a lot of other small opportunities as consulting and so on. And a couple of years ago, I was contacted by UND saying I was eligible to graduate. So I finally got to walk the stage and get my diploma.
That's awesome. Oh, really cool. And that time in Winnipeg, what's the like art scene there like? I'm always curious.
It's amazing. So historically, a lot of my family is from the Winnipeg area as First Nations people. One of the really cool side notes is our family are the Lashmadaires, and Louis Riel is the founder of Manitoba, and that would be my family. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, living in Winnipeg was wonderful because I saw my family everywhere being acknowledged. And I grew up on the reservation, and then I moved to Grand Forks, and it was challenging not seeing family or culture every day. And living up in Winnipeg, it felt like home. It was really great. And the art scene was just, for me, as not so much as a participant, but as a viewer, I thought it was very vibrant. And it seemed like there was always people advocating for access to arts. At that time, they were just starting their financial campaign for the Canadian Human Rights Museum.
I
And that was,
love that
yeah,
museum. I've been there like 2 times and
yeah,
oh, it's so
wonderful.
cool.
And it was very arts oriented. I love that they incorporated a lot of the customs in the area in there. So one of the things in my culture is we actually don't have a word for art because our artwork's generally functional. So, like I have paintings behind me, but a lot of times we adorned whatever we were using, whether it was a tool or clothing or something, it had adornment on it. So that was the practice of art in itself.
Nice. So currently you are working just as an artist, or what's your
Yep.
current job?
First and foremost, I'm a mom, so that keeps me pretty busy. I'm an independent artist and I do a lot of advocacy work, and I serve on a few different boards just for uh, various reasons. I believe that artists are small businesses, they are entrepreneurs, of course. So I serve on the board for the North Dakota Business Indian Alliance to try to bring a voice for artists working in that realm. And I also serve on the Grand Forks Education Alumni Network too. So for
Nice.
public schooling. So I use my work as a catalyst to bring up different conversations that I don't feel necessarily are heard too often. So, and I think art's a unique way to bring those conversations.
I agree. That's super interesting. So like um going forward or during this pandemic time, how has art changed for you? Because I suppose being a mom and like on these committees, but also an independent artist, you're working maybe from home more or your studio or
Um,
what changed at all?
so my art career I felt was just starting to gain momentum. So I was doing a lot of traveling throughout the United States and participating in national shows and national events, such as there's one, it's called Swaya Indian Market, and it was coming up on the 99th year. And so a lot of art markets are based on what they've done in the past 100 years. And so I was starting to get known through events like that. And so, of course, it's a lot of studio time, but then we spend a lot of time traveling and so on. And I was, like I said, really starting to pick up momentum and receiving the national recognition for that. And then all of a sudden, COVID stepped in and just brought it to a complete halt. And my artwork, I actually prefer doing like large scale paintings, which of course then come with a cost. And the prices are a little higher, well, can be a lot higher, I suppose. Um, and all of a sudden, COVID comes in and the economy is shut down. And so I had to reevaluate, how am I going to be able to continue my artistic process and practices while being able to be economically sustainable. And so at this time, thankfully, through like the CARES Act and stuff, a lot of funding was going to different organizations, and a lot of foundations started doing emergency grants. And one of my interests, I had mentioned a little bit of background in the computer arts and so on, but I haven't really practiced that in 20 years. I really wanted to go back to that. So I was able to write a grant, actually a few different grants for acquiring new equipment, so new technologies. So I have a laser cutter and better uh, computer and so on. And so I've been able to develop things like these earrings here.
I was gonna say, are those
Yeah. So
laser cut? Oh,
yeah.
awesome.
So if you look at the earrings, you'll see them like back in this painting. So I'm taking imagery from my paintings and then trying them in a different medium. So that's been really exciting and a lot of fun. I've had an Etsy page for a while, but I never really spent time using that platform. Uh, it kind of gets complicated when it comes to original artwork in there. So I didn't really use it. So I had to really sit down and try to figure out that platform, how it's used, and what's the best way of marketing, and what what's more accessible for me. Because one of the things working from home is I need space for storage, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
storing different things. And I've also started a clothing line, and that's sportswear. And I was able to find, over the last few years, I've been experimenting and found a manufacturer that I was happy with. And they've had to also work through the bumps and bruises of COVID and so on. And so that's been a really painstaking process, but
Yeah, I
really
bet. Are
easy.
they having like trouble like manufacturing stuff
Um,
or
the
slower?
staffing, of course, so all of a sudden, I suppose other people in similar situations as myself decided this is probably going to be a way to sustain income, is making their own clothing and so on. And just in general, I think people want to just put their stamp on things that are more everyday use. And so the manufacturing companies weren't able to keep up because, of course, they're trying to have their safety practices um, set in place, and making sure that their own staff are being safe and healthy. So it really, it went from something where these were made to order clothes that would be mailed out by the end of the week. So now we're seeing, a 3 to 4 week delay. And then on top of that, we're having problems with shipping because, of course, the post office and all that,
Yeah,
it's
there's
just, it's
a lot
yeah,
going on with
yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah, I know. Just like personally, like some of the stuff I've ordered has taken like a lot longer, gotten lost or something.
I just got this necklace in today from a Etsy artist, and I forgot I ordered it like
Yeah,
probably months ago. So
That's happened to me too.
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, what is this? I don't know what this is." Yeah. Oh, so yeah, that more the shift to online and then some struggles with that during COVID. Um, did you mention earlier that your sales went up with Etsy during the COVID time, or was that, more
Yeah,
people using
my income
online?
definitely was nowhere near the year previous, but, I've it might not seem like much, but I've made 200 sales off of Etsy, and I think that's pretty amazing. I know they're smaller sales and, fees and all that, it all gets taken out. So, but yeah, it's definitely kept me busy because I am now having to, I'm not creating it, putting it online. And then, of course, then you have to keep track of who's ordering what, where it needs to go. So I'm my own processing center on top of the
Yeah,
process.
wear many different hats, and I'm sure but
Yeah.
that's like 200 people or around 200 people that found your site and like wanted to order stuff, and that's really cool.
Yeah. That's
That's awesome.
very exciting.
So then you also mentioned you like to work big scale canvas works, and that's kind of changed during COVID. Um,
Right. Um, I miss doing it and I am slowly getting back into that, just for my own sanity. Uh, but those aren't things that are necessarily marketable right now because we don't have buyers out there that are spending their money. They're being a lot more conservative now. So and and if it's like an institution that's making the investment, they're also being very cautious and maybe they don't have those funds that they normally would. So yeah, so I've had to cut back quite a bit on it, but I have so many things in my mind and my journal of different projects that I want to continue. And I've been doing smaller paintings, of course, then I'm like, if I really like it, I'm like, I need to redo this on a larger scale. So so it's just it's quite the shift to try to switch to, thinking what's smaller. Um and so I guess that's where my business background comes into play, is that I'm always thinking of that uh that part of it is, some people feel as an artist, when you start worrying about money, it interferes with the art making, and it can.
yeah,
Uh, there's no denying that, but we also have to pay our bills at the end of the day. We need to pay for the roof over our head and to pay for more materials, if we're not using natural resources, but we have to be careful with those, so that we're not overusing those. So yeah, and it's a constant investment, of course, in ourselves and then sharing that with the rest of the world.
yeah, it's a definitely a lot of things go into it, and I'm as I progress in the program, I'm starting to think more about what is happening after graduation, and there's a lot to think about. Yeah. So,
Right.
um,
I originally was hoping to go into curation. I wanted to be a curator for a long time.
oh, cool. I actually work with UND Art Collections who put together the book and stuff, and so that's been really fun. We do I don't exactly like curate, but I like help set up
Every
exhibits and such,
every
and
little thing helps, you know.
yeah,
Um,
it's
yeah,
pretty
go ahead.
interesting. Yeah. So I guess getting into like post-COVID, what are you thinking will come out of this? Like for your art or art in general, like shift to online or like
I am
gallery shows?
very post COVID. I'm very much ready to bust out of my house. I was just thinking this morning that, we're coming up on March very quickly, and this has been the longest spring break for my kids ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're here doing virtual learning. I actually do have some health issues, so we just decided, for the safety of mom and of course our children, that it was best that they stayed home. So, and that has definitely been another thing that we have to work through. As I'm trying to work as an artist, I've cut back my hours severely because I have to focus on our family and keeping them safe and healthy, and making sure that their, mental health is there, as we've pulled back on visiting family and friends and so on, and just getting out of our home. So post post COVID. I mean, of course, there's not a post COVID. We'll always have this,
Yeah.
but as things get a little more safe, I'm definitely ready to get back into doing markets. I miss going to shows and working with museums and galleries and so on, and just visiting and talking about art in general because it's not the same doing it online. Um, I love how like the artwork invokes thought and then having that interaction with people. So I'm looking forward to the conversations.
Going back, yeah, it's crazy how back last March it was like, oh, 2-week quarantine, and now here we are a year later.
Right.
It's always interesting to think back on that. But yeah, I think looking forward to shows and stuff. Hopefully, when everyone gets the vaccine, that'll be nice.
Yeah. Yep.
Y-
Um, yeah. So I'm already looking at markets and just trying to have some optimism, even though realistically I have to have a backup plan. And that's the other part of this for myself and not I'm sure many artists is having that plan B and C because a lot of us have never done that. You know, we just always relied on that plan A of whatever we had in our lives. And so thinking of, what if this happens or that happens? What can we do, to navigate through this? So um, I hope that communities have realized how important the arts are in their economy too. When we have artistic events, that brings in a lot of outsiders and just helps generate revenue throughout our communities. So hopefully we'll see that communities make extra effort to ensure that artists are taken care of.
Yeah, I agree. And like being like kind of new to the Grand Forks art situation, like how has it been? Like, do you think they've done like a decent job of that, or I guess there's always more they can do.
Um, to be honest, I don't feel like I've ever broke into the arts scene in Grand Forks. I've tried. Um, there is some gatekeeping that takes place in who gets to be a successful artist here in this community. And so that's always been a challenge for myself, which is, you know, I adapt and, not breaking into this area as an artist really helped me get out and see the rest of the world. So I would have never been in places like LA and San Francisco and Washington, D.C. if it wasn't for that rejection. So I've been able to see the I guess the silver lining through all of this. Um, I have some great friends here in Grand Forks that are amazing artists and they do very well. Um, I haven't figured out my my way to succeed here yet, but I mean I think it'll happen. It's finding that groove. And I think I have such a culturally specific style that that might be uncomfortable for some.
I have another question about kind of the culture environment of North Dakota affecting you as an artist. I think that kind of answered that. But I suppose the environment, like your heritage from here, is obviously like a big theme in your work. Is there any like other stuff about that you'd like to share?
Um, I
Sorry, I'm
yeah,
new to
I don't
this,
know.
but
It's so hard because I haven't talked about my artwork to anybody in over a year. um, One of the things I guess that I found um, was somewhat of a struggle with my art making process is just people wanted to romanticize my work and tell me what I should be making versus what I wanted to create. So navigating through that had been generally hard. Um, and my I always feel like my work tends to have different statements in them, and I do a lot of advocacy. So our area is very um, much tied to UND's previous logo, and so people really wanted me to bring my artwork around that logo, which I was very vocally against. And I feel like it's time to move on with that and to stop the with the stereotyping. So by me rejecting that suggestion of living up to those stereotypes that kind of in turn rejected me, in the community. So
That's really unfortunate
yeah,
that people, especially because it was such a thing where people were like against. There's a lot of talk about being against it, and then they're like, "You should do that." That's
right.
really disappointing.
Yeah, yeah. So and it's just um I guess living in the community and then being involved in, the fundraising and trying to make sure that these institutions are floating about, a lot of this ends up going to who holds the purse strings. So um, that gets to be a problem, versus letting artists just create what they're wanting to create. I don't let it hinder my creativity at all. That's the great thing about being an independent artist is that I'm representing myself and I have a say in what I'm making. Um, but in this area, I don't think um, I would have that sustainability. But thanks to things like technology and the internet and being able to get out there and explore different communities where I am being brought in and accepted for who I am and my voice and what I have to make, that's been very beneficial.
Well, I hope the like festivals and stuff start up again because that'd be really interesting to like follow. Also, are they
Right.
doing any online stuff with that?
Um, uh, Online here locally, not that I know of. Um, we actually really don't have a community-wide arts arts council or organization that is meant to promote artists that live here within our area. Um, the Indian art market that I had mentioned, located down in Santa Fe, they actually did do a virtual show this year, and they've been promoting that. And if we don't have our numbers looking healthy, by August, I'm guessing that they'll continue doing the online show. I am actually in a show, All My Relations, down in Minneapolis. And because of the restrictions that were created, they actually turned the show online. And so there's a lot of amazing technologies that have been created for gallery spaces to be able to give you that idea of being in the space. And then they, show the artwork and promote the artists. So that's been really amazing to see with or without me being involved with them. It's just amazing how our creativity impacts everything. We're constantly forced to think out of the box and how to make things work. So I've seen their capabilities of doing that. I've seen in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, the MacRosty Center, they've also been doing online shows, as well as I believe oh gosh, I'm blanking. Oh, the Watermark Art Center in Minnesota. So, and with that said, Minnesota has an amazing, uh, I don't even know what the word would be, but they have several councils, art councils throughout the state, and that's through state funding. And so then they try to manage these dollars to support the artists within their region and make sure that there's constant revenue and activities in their areas. So it'd be wonderful if we could get something like that in North Dakota.
We should be doing more of that.
Right.
Uh,
One of the problems, though, that happens, and with or without the internet, it still happens. But especially with the internet, artists aren't always protected because then someone can take your imagery and then sell it or reproduce it. So that
true.
gets to be a problem. I've had problems with that in the past. So then we're dealing with lawyers. I mean, it's amazing and complicated for artists what we have to go through to protect ourselves and just to have sustainability in our lives.
Yeah, like trying to use those social media platforms can be like a double-edged sword, I guess, because you want people to see your work and stuff, but then everyone can see it. It's like it gets complicated fast,
Right.
but
And different artists might be given credit for your work and so on. So I just actually witnessed that yesterday, where an artist had
oh,
a beautiful piece online and it was circulating everywhere, and they were giving the credit to another photographer. And
oh,
it's quite disparaging. See
yeah.
that happen.
And I suppose that could even happen like on accident too, and then it's just like, oh, just a whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so are there any there like aspects of North Dakota art that you think deserve like more appreciation or more representation? Like, yeah.
Those are two different questions for
Yeah,
me.
sorry.
So, it's really interesting because we have so much talent in our state as a whole, and where I come from in the Chilliwack Mountains, we have just such an abundance of artists of all sorts, and I wish that more people would see that, acknowledge it, and celebrate it, even within our state, but outside, like, there's no reason for this not to be a global conversation of how much talent we have in North Dakota. Um, a lot of times people just don't understand what North Dakota has to bring to the rest of the world, and we have so much, and artists are definitely a part of that. We have that inspiration of these amazing 360 sunsets and sunrises and like the colors and the simplicity. It's really beautiful, and we get to see just such dramatic changes throughout the year, and I think that affects our artwork. So I think that's really amazing and beautiful. And then just studying the people themselves, because we're all so different and complicated and everything. So, we have amazing palettes and subject matter and conversations that we could bring with our artwork.
Awesome. Yeah. I was just thinking about that. The changes of the season are so dramatic here, and how like that is a unique aspect, and also like just the vast amount of space we have compared to other areas. It really does have an impact in some way.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
think a lot of people are really shocked at the wide open spaces, and they just
Yeah.
really appreciate that. I mean, I miss my trees and hills, of course, coming from more of a forested area with lakes and so on. But I mean, that wide open space is really amazing too, and it should be celebrated.